What's up, guys? Tim Little, Matt Allen. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin', and welcome back to another holiday buyer's guide video for you. Today we are talking everything crankbaits.
Crankbait fishing is one of our favorite ways to catch a bass. Now, it is a giant subject. You've got everything from squarebills to giant deep divers, lipless cranks, and everywhere in between. What we've done today is we're just trying to simplify it for you. If you are interested in throwing cranks, we're headed into the holidays, so gift ideas for your loved ones. What we've tried to do is take every major subject in the crankbait category and give you a couple of the key baits. So there's a bunch of different baits here, but they're for different purposes. You don't need all of them. We're gonna start off shallow, then go to lipless, and then work through the mid and the deep divers, then end it with rods and reels. You wanna kick us off?
Sure. Let's start with squarebills. I'll go with this guy right here. This guy right here. That is the Bill Lewis, that is the ATV. Basically, this is a four-wheel drive of squarebills. You can throw it in and around standing wood. You can throw it shallow. It comes through rock really well. Comes with EWGs already pre-rigged on the bait, but a fairly inexpensive bait. You can throw it basically where you don't want to throw any of these other baits.
Right.
The bill angle, the float on this bait allows this bait just to come through some pretty thick stuff. We've been blown away. We've literally tried to get this hung up, and
there's something magical about it. You can throw it over a laydown, run it through, and it does not stick. It's incredible.
It's a special bait. And like Matt's talked about in previous seminars and stuff, the crankbait category as a whole is just changing and evolving so quickly. Some of the best baits in the entire genre are newer baits.
Right.
Pretty cool. So this guy right here is a great way to start off. That's an awesome bait.
So obviously it's hard to narrow it down to two baits in a category, right? But these two are special baits. And like Tim said, they're both fairly new. This one is from Rapala. This is the OG Rocco. They designed this one with Ott. And this is a balsa bait. And again, a very, very special bait. When we were looking at this category, trying to narrow it down, we went with the two baits that do things completely different. That one is so four-wheel drive, it will blow your mind. It'll go anywhere, but then when fish eat it, they still hook up. It's crazy. The Rocco has the most incredible startup speed of any crankbait I've ever dealt with. And what I mean by that is when you throw it out and you start reeling, the vibration is instant. A lot of baits, they have to sort of get going, and you leave the strike zone if you're fishing around shallow cover. This, you can pitch it up along a piling and immediately start it. So we talk a lot, you guys know that saying, burn, 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 pause, burn, 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 pause. With this guy, it's like twitch, pause, twitch, pause, twitch, because it'll instantly start and stop. It is a remarkable bait. If you want to dabble in the squarebill game and you don't know where to start, you cannot lose with one of those two baits.
My introduction to that Rocco was Matt kicking my butt from the front of the boat with it. Like, what are you throwing? And he was hands down just cleaning up with that Rocco. It's a really special bait. All right, next up, next category, we're talking about kind of like the flat side squarebills, if you would. This is the Spro Little John. Tighter wobble. It's a bait that you can burn really quickly with it not blowing out. Again, burn, 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 pause, burn, 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 pause. You hit that piece of cover, you deflect, you pause, but having that flat side versus a big wide body keeps that wobble nice and tight, and that really shines when you're burning and when you're fishing it in a little bit colder water.
Yes. That cold water, man, like early spring, late fall, that flat side is just magical. They stay on it longer, whereas a typical squarebill will go all through the summer. That flat side is like the first and the last bait that they eat every year. A second one here, this is from Shimano. This is their flat side. That little flat is a unique bait. It's got, I think they call it jet boost. Is that what they call it? I don't know. Everybody's got fancy names for their stuff, right? But it's got a sliding weight system in it. One of the issues with flat sides historically is that they catch a lot of wind. When you go to cast them, they're hard to throw. And this bait will go. That weight transfers to the back and you get an amazing cast, even on light tackle. I've been very, very impressed with my ability to cover water with this bait. If I could only have one color as well, that is the color that I would be throwing. And with that in mind, if you guys aren't familiar with these buyer's guides, below the video, whether you're watching this on tacticalbassin.com, there it's easy to find. You scroll down, there's the whole description. On YouTube or Facebook, depending on if you're on a phone or a computer, you might have to hit the 3 little dots to open the description below. You might have to hit more, then scroll down, hit more again to fully open the description. But no matter where you're viewing this, below this video is a full description where we link every single one of these in the order that we're talking about, straight to Tackle Warehouse. So they're easy for you to find. We'll also give you our favorite colors for each one, just as a reference point. You know, where you fish might be a little different, but if you want to know what Tim and I throw, we're including our favorites right there for you as well.
All right, next up for me, we're going ultra shallow. Do you want to go top water first and then? Or,
No, go for it.
There are times in the year where those fish get ultra shallow. I mean crazy shallow, where you have to like beach the boat and get out and walk to make a cast shallow. And these fish are like, you know, their backs are out of the water, they're blowing up on bait fish, ultra shallow. And sometimes you need a crankbait that can do that. You can go ultra shallow. I mean, I'm talking less than a foot. So like 1.5 feet to like 8 inches. Yep. This guy right here, this is the BTC 50 by Demiki. This is an awesome, awesome ultra shallow Squarebill. It deflects really well. What's cool about this one, you guys probably can't hear it, but it has a really subtle rattle. But when those fish are ultra shallow, I'm talking about like needing to throw a topwater almost. Right. This is an awesome bait to, I mean, I love throwing this bait, throwing it on a nice little cranking setup, get it up there shallow, burn, 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 pause, and they just knock slack in your line. You see, it's a really fun way to catch them, especially late fall. Like I said, when they're up there ultra shallow chasing that bait, that guy right there is a cool little Squarebill.
You know, the fall is where you really see the difference, because a lot of people will go, well, I've got a big Squarebill and a little Squarebill, and that's what I throw. I used to be that way. What I learned in the fall is you start getting that grass that's breaking down, dying, sticking to the bottom. You get leaves coming off the trees, sticking to the bottom. It's not about just throwing a bait and trying to go slower to keep it up. It doesn't work. The second you touch bottom, you catch that junk. Yeah. There is a tangible difference when you can get a bait that will stay in that column and you can go fast. It's incredible, because we get on these Squarebill bites when no one else is on a Squarebill bite, and it's because we've dialed in the baits for the depth ranges. It's not about taking a bait and trying to make it work. It's having the right bait at the right time for that depth range. It's everything.
That's a great point. Another time of year where this thing really shines is right as that grass starts coming up, but you have that like 8 inches or so before it gets to, you know, tops out on the surface. You can literally burn this Squarebill and just tick the tops of the grass above it, and those fish just come out. It's a cool, really cool little Squarebill.
That's a great time. All right, another one for you. This is one that I fell in love with this year. Again, from Shimano. This is their 50F, the shallow. You can see that super steep angle on that bill. This is literally a topwater. You might be able to burn it that far under the surface, but if you're going moderate speed at all, it's waking on the surface. I wrecked shop with this over the last few months. Absolutely crushed with it. Same place that you're throwing, you know, a walking bait, you're throwing a whopper plopper, some other straight retrieve bait. Fish have seen a lot of those things, and particularly in the fall, we get a lot of those little tiny bait fish. This bait proved to be special. I was catching fish on days where I couldn't get a topwater bite. It's a 1-2 punch here. Just below the surface, ultra shallow, right on top, ultra shallow. They just work. If you want to play in that shallow game, you need to try some of these slightly different baits. They will take it to the next level for you.
he started talking about that, I started smiling because I was just kind of picturing in my head, you know, you guys have probably all seen it. You've been out there fishing and you see like that single shad that breaks off from the school.
Running
and
for
it's
it.
up on the surface and it's got that V. You're like, oh, here it goes. And you see the blow up. When you have that little V, just that little bait fish off out of the school by itself just always just gets destroyed. So that's a...
Yep.
Let's go lipless cranks now. That's a completely different category. Lots of different ways to fish them. You know that Matt and I like to fish them on bottom, kind of flutter them, hop them up and down 3 or 4 times. You can burn them, rip them, all sorts of different ways to fish them. Let's talk, I'll go here. Just coming from the West Coast. This is kind of was our deal out there. The Lucky Craft LV 500. That color specifically is American shad. I don't know how many doubles we've caught on this bait particularly, but it's a lot, and we have a ton of confidence in it. It's a 3/4 ounce bait.
You don't mean doubles 2 fish at one time. You mean doubles double digit,
yes.
10 pounders.
Yeah, 10+ pounders. It's just a special bait, and through the years of traveling the country, there's just different fisheries that like different lipless cranks.
Yep.
But being from the West Coast, Clear Lake, the Delta, that LV 500 is a must. You can't do a lipless crankbait video without talking about
Absolutely.
it. Just has a real unique sound, real loud sound. Again, it's that 3/4 ounce bait. Where this really shines is when you're doing that flutter technique where you're popping off bottom and letting it fall. You're getting that reaction strike as it falls to the bottom. But that guy right there, it's just a bait that we've used for years, and couldn't do a video without including it. Again, so many big fish caught on that thing right there. Just a great bait.
Another one for you. So in that same category, because the deal with the LV 500 and with this guy, this is the Jackal TN70, it's all about that fall rate. These are lipless baits that sink like a rock. They weigh way more than all the other lipless on the market for their size. So like you want a 3/4 ounce bait in a red eye shad, it's a big profile, or in a rattle trap, it's a big profile. But in a TN70 or an LV 500, it's a very small profile. So they crash to bottom very quickly, and that is that reaction strike that we get when we're bottom hopping these baits. That TN70 is a bait, as we moved east, as we traveled the country more, we found that TN70 just seems to catch them in more situations, particularly here on the Tennessee River. The subtle sound difference, the TN70 gets massacred. One other thing, the LV, the 500 is the special one, man. It is the deal. As you go down the sizes, I don't see the same results with all the sizes. Do well with the 150, but some of the in-between sizes, I just have never had those awesome results. In the TN, the 60, slightly smaller profile, that's the 1/2 ounce. Just crazy that little guy is a 1/2 ounce. But that TN60 has the exact same magic. So if you're trying to match bait fish size, both the 60 and the 70 are legendary baits.
Now to switch it up a little bit, we talked about those heavy lipless cranks. This is the Rattle Trap by Bill Lewis. This is a light bait. This bait is a 1/2 ounce. So Matt's just talking about the TN60. Look at the size comparison between the Rattle Trap and the 60. If you're a guy that's around grass, or you're doing that burn and you're kind of ripping it through the tops of grass, you don't necessarily need or want a heavier lipless crankbait because it's gonna get hung up a lot worse than a light bait. So you can get a larger profile. Again, that's a 1/2 ounce bait, super loud. But the Rattle Trap, if that's the type of lipless fishing you're doing, you know, the Tennessee River, a lot of guys like to rip grass,
cleaning that grass, blasting it.
That is the lipless you want. So that's why we have 2 or 3 or 4 different styles of lipless cranks, because there's all different scenarios.
Yep.
And each of these guys are really good at that specific scenario.
All right, let's shift gears again. Now we're talking speed cranking. Cold water crankbait fishing. For most of you, if you follow tactical, you know where this is headed. But for a lot of people, they have no clue. Even today, after all these years that we've taught how to crank in cold water, they have no clue the power of cold water speed cranking. This is one of the best ways to catch giant fish in existence. Period. I don't care the category, the bait, giant swim baits, jigs. Speed cranking is one of the best ways to catch the biggest bass of your life. It just targets big ones at a time when they are vulnerable. We're cranking super cold water all the way down into the high 30s, where people think you have to be moving so slow to get bit. No, 8-to-1 reel, burn, 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 pause, burn, 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 pause, burn, 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 pause, drawing a core feed response out of a bass. We have entire videos dedicated to this subject, so we'll leave it there. If you're not familiar, you should go track some of those down. But today we've narrowed it down to 2 baits for you. The first one, this is the River to Sea Tactical DD75. Tim and I designed this bait specifically for cold water speed cranking. Now, we've been amazed that people blast them, well, we blasted them too in warm water, but that was not the intention. What we were after was a cold water bait that could be fished in a variety of situations, where you could burn it in open water, making no contact with bottom, with that stop and go, burn, 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 pause, burn, 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 pause, up in the water column, get fish to react. But a bait that would also deflect extremely well off of a rock. So if you are cranking rock piles, cranking the ends of long tapering points, you can make good contact with bottom and catch fish that way too. But that Tactical DD75 we specifically designed for fishing September, October up to about March. Now, again, as it turned out, it's great year-round, and we've done more colors to support some of that year-round stuff too. But subtle, natural colors where fish can't key in on it, that reaction takes over and they have to chase. And then with those subtle colors, they get right on that bait. Then you stop it and they're just
choke it.
It's a feed response. It's amazing. And again, we'll link some of our favorite colors for you.
Yeah, so basically there's 2 ways to get a bass to eat, right? You have to either fool them or tap into that core feed response, what Matt's talking about. And when you're trying to fool a large bass, a double-digit size bass, they've been around the block, right? They've been caught early on. They're smart, right? But there's a way to bypass that, and that's triggering those fish, getting them to eat or chase even though they don't want to, and even in cold water when they don't want to. And that's what this technique is all about. Tapping into that core feed response and getting those big ones to eat. You're not fooling them, you're making them react. So another great bait, it's gonna be this guy right here. This is a Mega Bass Deep 6. Now, what both these baits have in common, they have a really tight wobble, a lot like the flat side. In that cold water, you don't want a real aggressive, wide thumping crankbait. You want that real tight kick. You want that bait to get down and deflect really well. So this Deep 6 gets down a few feet deeper than ours. It's when you need to reach that like 18 to 20 foot on light line, maybe 10 or 12. You can go lighter, right? 10 or 8, but we recommend 10 or 12. But it has a real thin lip on it. And again, it's a real finessey deep crank. So it's that cold water, tight action, but it's more of a finessey crankbait that gets down deep. And again, with Mega Bass, you got some great colors to choose from.
Yeah, this whole concept, it's a method of fishing, and there's multiple tools in that method, because we've narrowed it down to 2 for you today. But the speed cranking thing, there's times where you want to do it shallower, there's times where you want to do it deeper, and each tool has its place in that arsenal. When we built that Tactical DD, we wanted to build a bait that would do the most things right. But it's not perfect for every situation. It will not get as deep as that Deep 6 consistently. It just won't do it. So you need to understand how to reach those different depths effectively. Now, speaking of different depths, let's talk mid-cranking. Those in-between sizes. This is probably the most overlooked category that there is. I think people ignore it, and there's so many fish to be caught there. Baits that run in that, let's say 7 to 11 foot. They're smaller profiles. They're still deep divers, but they're not super deep divers. They catch fish year round. And one of our absolute favorite baits for that, this is the Rapala DT8. The 8 in particular, it's just the right profile to consistently get bit. I mean, I've caught them in Florida cranking outside grass edges with this thing. It just plain catches them.
Another great bait in that depth range. It's more of a bait that I kind of go with when I'm fishing rock.
Yeah.
If I'm around like fishing that same depth range, but I'm fishing a lot of like either shale or riprap or chunk rock, that sort of thing, is going to be the Spro rock crawler. And not only does this bait have a good action, but it deflects extremely well, which is why it's called the rock crawler, right? You can creep it around the rock. Again, you're burning it, you're pausing when you hit that rock. But another cool thing with the Spro is they specialize, especially in the rock crawler, in craw patterns. I mean, there's probably, I don't want to guess, but I'll probably say 10 to 15 different craw patterns just in this style of crankbait. But again, that depth range is really key, because a lot of guys don't fish. They think either deep crank or squarebill.
Or squarebill.
Right?
Right.
It's not
they
really
miss the middle.
And there's so much in between. And those are two really good options for that depth range.
All right, let's shift gears to more of those traditional, like actual deep divers. I'm going to throw a brand new one at you. This is one that I have been throwing for a year now. This is from Nomad. This deep diver is really unique because it's very, very small for the depth that it's hitting. It's also really loud. It's a very, very different profile. But that traditional deep diver, we're looking for a bait that will get down, wide wobbling, making a ruckus, drawing a feed response from those fish during typically warmer water conditions, right? It's not when we're cold water speed cranking in the winter. Those summer baits, completely different animal. This is an interesting one, and what caught my attention was its size. Bass are getting wary. They are getting beat up in every fishery across this country. We all know it. And being able to hit those same depth ranges with a smaller profile, and then with a different sound profile. It's not the same 6XD or the same DD22. There's nothing wrong with those baits. They're staple baits. But coming along with something different will get you bit when those fish have been pressured. One other thing about this bait that caught my attention is the line tie. It's loose in its position. It's literally, it's patented. And it's genius.
It's really smart.
You don't have to tune them. They stay tuned on their own. All crankbaits have to be tuned from time to time. It's very simple, and also we have videos on how to do that. But this is one that does not. That line tie is a little loose, and it will track true all of the time. Comes with great stock hardware. I mean, it's a ready to rock bait, and is a unique one that's worth taking a look at.
Yeah, we're talking about dive angles. We're looking at these bills and stuff. When you throw a crankbait out, you want that thing to dive down straight, right? That's how it's going to get deepest, make a long cast, get down. But when you have the line tie off to the left or off center, off to the right, that bait's going to dive down. You're not going to get that that max depth of, or the capability of that crankbait. So having a line tie that self-adjusts is
pretty
genius,
wild.
and I can't believe it's taken this long for it to be developed, but that is really smart. I'm going to go with this guy right here. So Matt talked about the DT8. This is the DT. This is actually the 16. I'm going to talk about the 16 and the 20. So Rapala has the DT line, right? Dives to. So it's really easy. It's on the bill. It'll tell you the depth that these baits dive to. But what I really like about the 16 and the 20, they're basically a true suspending crankbait. So with the advancements of technology with forward-facing sonar and such, you can get down, you can see where the fish are and get through the lineup of the DT series and get the depth that you need to stay right above them.
Stay right
and then
there.
You can burn it and then pause and let that sit there and suspend, almost like a jerk bait in front of those fish, and they just come up and eat it. So I love the DT 16, the 20, depending on the depth I need them to go. They have great colors, good hardware, but that whole DT line is really good. Again, this is more of a warmer weather, warmer water crankbait, more of a wider action, wider kick, more aggressive. So that is a good post-spawn, fall, summertime crankbait, but the DT series as a whole is really, really good.
All right, last but not least, let's talk about the ultra deep divers, those bigger, super deep dwelling baits, the baits that get down there and catch those fish that otherwise can't be reached with a crankbait. This guy right here is a bait that I have done so much damage with. This is the Azuma Z-Boss. Specifically, I throw the 22 and the 24. It comes smaller and bigger, but the 22 and the 24 just seem to have that magic for me. Super steep dive angle. It gets down really, really quickly, and then I just like that overall profile, and it's just a bait that I've done so much damage with across the country and internationally also. Just a bait that I personally have a lot of confidence in when it's time to go super deep and I want to show them a different profile.
Yeah, just like in the lipless category, we talked about the LV500. How do you do a what category are we calling
Mag crankbaits, but yeah,
ultra deep crankbait
diver.
The Strike King 10XE. You can see it's quite a bit. The body itself is a little bit bigger than the Azuma, but this is really the bait that started it all for the deep cranking, right? When you can, you know, we talked about earlier on in this video, fooling a bass versus triggering a bass. When you can get down to those depths where those fish haven't been triggered before, they're used to being fooled, you know, following a huddle, you know, a big swim bait or a burrito, something like that. Now you can do the burn, burn, burn pause. You can pause it when you hit a piece of hard cover. You know, you can get real erratic with this bait. Having a bait getting down to those depths and then triggering those fish is key. And that's why these big Magnum cranks work so well. But the 10XD, that's really the bait that really started that whole craze for the Magnum deep cranking. You and I we've done damage with this bait. I mean, caught
so much damage.
Lots of giants with it, lots of double-digit bass on it, but also doubles. We've caught several times where you get down in that 25-foot range and you'll come up and you'll have 2 4-pounders stuck.
Right.
I mean, it's just a really cool bait. Again, good stock hardware. We upgrade all the hardware on these bigger cranks just because we are going deeper and we're trying to catch bigger fish. But that 10XD, I mean, it'll wear you out. Like it
pulls back.
You have to commit to throwing the deep crank, especially with that big bill on it. It's going to pull back, but we'll talk about gear here shortly to kind of alleviate some of the issues. But that guy right there is a must if you're going more than 20 feet.
All right, with that, let's switch over to rods and reels. This is one of those places where you can do everything right, and you can throw these baits on like a typical medium heavy rod. You can throw it on a heavy in some cases, and you won't even know there's a problem until you hook a good one. It's when you hook that good one and you lose them that you realize the issue, because the bait's weigh enough to be thrown on those rods. Cranking is one of a few categories where we actually stop and say, the right rod is a must. We always recommend that you use the right rod for a given thing, right? And we have favorite rods in just about every category, but this is one where it is a must. You will go through all the motions, you'll learn the techniques, you will hook giants, and they will come off if your gear is not right. Let's start with the Squarebill rod. This is a rod that I did so much damage with this year. I threw the ATV, the Rocco, my flat sides. I was throwing them all on the Megabass Levante flat side special this year. It's just, I had a bunch of baits tied on one day. One of them was tied on this. I got on a tear catching them with it, and I noticed my hookup to land ratio was literally 100%. Literally never lost a fish, and it just clicked. Because Squarebills, there's so many different styles, it's hard to find a rod that can throw all those. When that clicked, I started paying attention, tying different baits on it, and I literally went months, this sounds insane, months without losing a crankbait fish. When you find the right action, those fish are dead meat when they hook up on that thing. Again, it's the Levante flat side special. Paired it up to a 13 fishing Concept C2. I typically throw that stuff on 12-pound fluoro. You can also throw it on light braid to leader for an even faster start and stop. But 12-pound fluoro is really convenient. It casts well. Again, we'll link the specifics in the description for you, but 12-pound line, flat side special, it wrecks shop.
So just like Matt talked about the right action for the Squarebill rods, a lipless crankbait rod. We've spent years throwing lipless cranks, and we went through dozens of rods trying to find the right action. This guy right here, this is Loomis. This is the 855 CBR. This is their lipless crank rod. It has the right action to do the hopping technique, it has the right action to do the ripping technique, but more importantly, when you set the hook and you bury the hooks into that fish's face and they start jumping with a 3/4 ounce lipless crank, they don't throw the bait. Having that good parabolic bend, but fast enough tip to do that hopping technique is key. The cool thing about this rod is in Loomis, there's different price points, right? Different lines of rods, and you can get this action in different price points. So if you're a guy that can't necessarily afford the IMX Pro line, there are some other lines you can check it out. Paired up with this is a 70 size reel. You can go with a 150 size reel. I actually like braid 2 liter. So we're throwing anywhere from 30 to 50 pound braid to a fluorocarbon or mono leader, depending if we're fishing around wood or rock. But having it paired up to a leader has that feel. The sensitivity of the braid with that leader is awesome. You can feel those little subtle vibrations. And a lot of the times when they eat this, you hop it, you let it fall, they'll knock the crud out of it, right? But sometimes you go to hop again and you're like, oh, there's one, right? So having that extra sensitivity is great. And having a faster gear ratio reel, 7-to-1, 8-to-1 is key to catch up to those fish. But if you're looking for the ultimate combo, this is it right here.
Last but not least, let's talk about a rod for deep cranking. Now, not necessarily for a 10XD, okay? For everything in the middle, our crankbait, the Deep 6, those full-size deep divers, mid cranks, and you can Squarebill on it if you want to. But this is, again, in that Loomis line, and this one is beat up because
it's all stained.
Just worn it out. This is the Loomis 906 CBR. It's a little bit longer, 7.5 foot, so it loads deeper. So when you're throwing one of these bigger deep cranks and you're burning that thing, burn, 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 pause, burn, 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 pause, that rod is already slightly loaded up. And when those fish tag that thing, you're right there at the backbone. They're easy to hook. Because on a long cast, especially if you're throwing fluoro, it can be hard to plant those bigger hooks. But if that rod's already loaded, you got them. You just lean back on them and it's over. That 906 is a special rod. Just like that flat side special, that's a rod where if I hang those fish, say on a size 4 or on a size 2 treble, even a size 1 treble, I just know if I don't do something tangibly wrong, I've already caught them as soon as they eat it. And that confidence is everything. I throw it on a little bigger reel, 150 size reel. That's Corrado 150 MGL. It'll send that thing. And same as the Squarebill, typically I start with 12-pound fluoro. You can go braid to leader, same exact thing I said about the other, but there's a place for fluorocarbon because it's just easy, right? You can change it out quickly if you've got a problem, but it's just convenient. You can cover a ton of water with it. You can get deep and it just works.
Yeah, cranking is one of those techniques. It's a terrible feeling when you're not throwing the right rod and basically the crankbait you're throwing is maxing out that rod, and then you catch a fish and you don't even know you have a fish on because it feels the same.
Yes.
And then it comes up and jumps and that you're like, what just happened? Been there, done that. Don't do that. You want to have a rod that loads good enough with the bait on it and is sensitive, but you can feel when that fish loads up that rod, and you get them pegged and you get them to the boat, and then having that right action to load and unload when those fish jump so that you can keep them pegged and get them to the boat is key. So guys, there it is. There is crankbaits in a nutshell. We talked about shallow cranks, flat-sided cranks, wake bait type cranks, Magnum cranks, and everything in between. Guys, down below we'll link all these baits, our favorite colors, and all the gear for you guys. Where do we go from here?
These buyer's guides are going 7 days a week right now, so don't miss it. We will see you again tomorrow with another bait category video for you. We are so excited. We know you guys love these videos. We do too. We'll see you tomorrow. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. We'll see you then.
See you guys.